Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started with today's webinar. We're talking about Turks, tips, and tricks, and we're going to look at part 2 of the new and improved NX Sketcher. Let's take a brief look at our agenda. So for our agenda, we're going to briefly talk about who we are, who's Geometric Solutions, and how we can help you. Then we're going to dive into our subject, the new NX Sketch. And we're going to get to see a lot of really nice things about this new tool that we have, or this new, I should say, solver that we have within NX. I've got my nerd glasses on the screen. Fair warning, I might geek out a little bit on some of the things we're going to look at. Now, for some of you, if you attended session 1, some of this is going to be the same, but just a little bit. And that's because we had so many new folks that registered for this webinar. If you'd like to attend or get a recording of version 1, then you can certainly do that. So within our agenda, the new NX Sketch. Now something that's neat is dimensions, they now rule. That is so anti-NX sketching, I know. And then we're talking about relations, not constraints. I am going to do my best to not say constraints, but I bet you I probably will a time or two. And then another question for some of you might be wondering, how long can we use the old sketch? Well, hopefully after you get a taste of the new sketch, you won't even be concerned about that, but we still will answer it at the end. Just a couple of points. If you have any questions, feel free to type them into the question box, and I'll do my best to answer them. And then also when it comes to handouts, I actually have a really good PDF handout, and it's all about the new sketch tool. So you can go in, take a look at that, and likely it's going to answer a lot of the questions that you might have. So briefly about myself, my name is Dan Turk, and I'm an application engineer with Geometric Solutions. So Geometric Solutions, the company that I work for, we sell Siemens software solutions. We're part of the larger Waltonen family of companies. It's kind of neat. We have Waltonen Engineering, where we've got hundreds of designers and engineers, so we can design anything. And then we have Independence Tooling Solutions, where the things we design, we can build. So you could say that from the beginning to the end, we've got it covered. The owner of our company, he put it nicely. Our ability to successfully partner with our customers comes from our experience in using the tools we sell every day. So it's not just that we're selling these tools, no, we're using them. All right, let's get to the good stuff. We're going to look at the new and vastly improved NX Sketcher Part 2. Now, if you think about it, the whole idea of sketching, that's been around, it seems like forever. It seems like for quite some time. But it's interesting that this hasn't changed very much over the years. And the reason that it hasn't changed over the years is because the current solutions to doing sketching, they don't allow us to make changes quickly. I mean, think about it. You create a sketch, and you're kind of locked in to that basic design. If you need to make some changes, sometimes you just blow away the sketch and start over. Why? Because you've got all those constraints. Everything is locked into place, so you can't make quick changes. Well, we know that our designs, they change, and our tools need to adjust to that. So NX is delivering the biggest leap forward in sketching since we first started sketching. And you might think, well, NX sketching, it already worked great. I was already able to use it really well. Why fix what's not broken? Well, you'll notice that there's this little quote here that says, independent analysis shows 30% reduction in time. Now, for myself, when I first jumped into the new Sketcher, I was skeptical. But the more I used it, the more I was geeking out about just how powerful it is. And hopefully you're going to get to see that too. Because what the new Sketcher does is it does the constraining for you as you need it, when you need it. Now, we might say, wait a minute, the previous versions of NX, they would create constraints as you would sketch. And to a point, that's true. You could put in a parallel or perpendicular or horizontal, vertical, and it would know what you were doing. But it was very limited. With the new sketch solver, we're able to look at all the geometry around what we're drawing, and it'll apply some of those relationships. And what's nice about it is it works seamlessly with the data regardless of the source. In part 1, I took like a parasolid, put a section through it, and then we were able to quickly maneuver that part, quickly manipulate it. Also, with the new sketching, it's very easy to create our sketches. Lots less button clicking. So this really is the future of sketching. So let's see the future, which we have right here for us today. I'm going to pull up my NX, and I'm just going to look at a couple of basic things to start with. So the first basic thing, and this is really simple, but man, I love it. Look at how easy it is to choose the plane that we want. Did I want the top, the right, the front? In previous versions of NX, we'd only have those coordinates. And so you try to figure out, well, which one is the top? And if anything moves, you're in trouble. So now, so simple. I'll pick the top, and it puts it right on the top. Something else that's nice is you'll notice we lost the Y and the X axes. And that's because they're replaced by this horizontal sketch axes, and it goes infinity. I mean, you all remember when you would try to tie back to that little axis that was here, you'd have to wait for the 3 dots, try to get everything to line up. It was a pain, not any longer. So let's go ahead and just sketch a really simple object. We're going to just sketch a box. Some things that we want to look at is when we look at a part, if it comes in brown, the lines, that means that it's movable. And that goes with this show movable option that we have. If we want to add dimensions, we might say, well, wait a second, where is the rapid dimension tool? I don't see it. Well, it's gone. Instead, we just simply click on a line, and if we just move, then we get that dimension. So I can put that in for whatever I want, and yep, I'll scale the entire part. Now, what's interesting about the new sketch solver is dimensions, they are king. Now that is different from previous versions. In previous versions, if I were to put an additional dimension right here, what would happen? Well, we know that the software, it would not like it. It would say that the sketch is over constrained. Well, with this new version, dimensions reign supreme. So I could pick this one dimension and make an adjustment. Now, if you notice, here at the middle, you can see there's a horizontal constraint, and now it's going to kind of a pink or a purple color. Now that's telling me that that constraint is going to be relaxed to be able to make this adjustment. So the dimension, it overrode the relation. Again, they're relations, not constraints. So I'll just say yes to that. And when we click on any portion of our sketch, we can see other relations that are on there, horizontal, vertical, and so on. So that's one of the big things, is that the dimensions, they rule. But let's see how you can sketch things and you can use a lot less button clicks. So I'm going to create just a very, very simple shape. I'm going to make an I-beam. So we'll just come in here, and like in previous versions, we would try to line it up. Although, did you know that when you did line it up in previous versions, it didn't actually do anything? So I'll just line this guy up. sketch that in there, and done. What's nice about this is the new solver, it's always looking at the part, trying to determine the relations. So if you notice, look how easy. One click, because I drew those, lined them up as I was sketching them, the software says, now wait a second, those must be lined up. And so it gives a collinear relation. And we have the same thing on this portion, except there's a little bit more. Notice when I drag that one little line down, the top comes with it. It's because it notices that there is an offset relation. And we have that same type of relationship here in the middle. In previous versions of NX, this would take a lot of work. You'd have to have put a dimension in for each of the offsets, even just to drag it around. In previous versions, if you wanted these two lines to be together, to be lined up, you'd have to use a collinear constraint. And there, and there. You get the idea. This is such a simple part. It's so easy, and yet there would be a lot of button clicking. Well, with the new version, with the new solver, it's just so easy. There's a couple other things that we can look at that are pretty cool. When I click to add a dimension, I'll just make that 25. And we might say, well, I want the bottom to also match that. Well, that's easy enough. We just click on the two, and then here on the middle of our screen at the top, we can just say, let's make those equal. So we're still putting in a relation, but now those are equal. Well, if we wanted to add a dimension for the middle of our I-beam, we actually would want to have it equal to that 25. Now this highlights another change. It says 25. It doesn't say P0 equals 25, like what we might be used to in previous versions. So you might be thinking, wait a minute, where's the expression? Well, to turn on expressions, we can now just do a right click, add and remove expression. Your first thought might be, well, wait a minute, this is extra work. But if you actually think about it, how often did you actually go and use these expressions? Maybe on an entire sketch, you would use one, maybe two. And so in this case, instead of having hundreds or thousands of expressions, you can just have a couple that you're actually using. Once you create that expression, it works the same as you would expect. So I can rename that one to thickness. I can put another dimension in here, and I can say that that is equal to thickness. And just that easily, we're able to have our part, have the expression linked up just like you would expect. Adding additional dimensions, it's easy. It's just a couple of button clicks. And we can dimension this part just as we would need to. There's a couple other cool things that we can do with the new sketch. Now, one of those is when you wanted to place a fillet. So I'm going to use a fillet, and I'll just go with a 5mm. In previous versions, you'd always have to, click, click, and click, click to get it to work. 2 button clicks. But with the new version, I can just click and drag. And notice just how fast I'm able to put those fillets in all around my part. You get the idea. This new version of sketching, it's all about making you faster. And so just that quickly, in a matter of seconds, I've got that fillet and it's in everywhere. So a really nice tool that we have. Something else that we have that's nice, and this is just a simple thing, but I think it's awesome, is if I click on the View tab, maybe that text is a little small. Well, I can just click Increase or Decrease. I know that's simple, but man, that is awesome. Sometimes we get these gigantic sketches and you just can't see what's going on. With the new version of Sketcher, it's no problem at all. So really a cool thing. Let's look at a couple of other things that we can do with our sketching. So one thing I'd like to show is if we were to highlight, put a box around our entire sketch, and then hold down the Control key, it actually gives us the option to copy an entirely new version of that sketch. So if you have some feature and you want to just have another version of it, very easy to do. And then we have this part. But what's nice is I can even take and line it back up, and now everything's aligned. Once I aligned it once, the solver says, well, everything else is in line too. Surely that's what you want. And it's right, that is what I wanted. Hopefully you're getting to see that this version of NX, it's just really powerful. I'm going to go ahead and finish this sketch, and I'm just going to create another one. And what I want to do is just create a couple of circles. In the last couple of versions of NX, they added a make horizontal or make vertical constraint where you could select a couple of points and line those guys up. You still can do that by using this make horizontal or make vertical. It does the same thing, but just looks a little different. But instead of clicking extra buttons, it's kind of neat. You can just actually grab that part, just have it touch off. So now it's lined up, and then it automatically puts those in line. So what the new version is having us do is just by clicking and then dragging, kind of touching off, you get an entirely new relationship. And it just makes your work that much easier. And then lastly, I'm going to just put in a very simple shape again, just a little rectangle. And what you'll notice is when it's brown, as we said, that is when it's movable. That shows things that are movable. Something I like to just point out though, I don't know, for me sometimes when I'm working, that brown can be a little difficult to see. Like I have trouble seeing, is that one brown, or which one is it? Well, if that describes you, it's really easy. Go to your preferences, sketch, and underneath part settings, you can change those movable curves, and you can make them any color that you want. So I'll just make them green. Okay. And there we go. Now I can see that a lot easier. And when I place that last dimension, well, there it goes, all black. The nice thing about doing it that way is it stays with this part. So if I were to go to a new part or another part, I don't have to worry about that setting. Although conversely, you could go into your customer defaults and make those changes too. And the last thing I want to show on this little part, I'm going to put a fillet in. And you can see you can still do it the old way. And I'll just place a little dimension. So sometimes we have a dimension and it used to be a circle. So it'll show it as a diameter. We've all had that, right? And it just doesn't look right. Or it could be that it shows a radius when it should be a diameter. Well, all we have to do is right-click on our dimension, convert to radius. Right-click, convert to diameter, and you get the idea. So again, very simple is what they're doing, is how they're changing things. Prior to this, you had to go into the settings, and you had to really do some work, not any longer. All right, I'm going to finish this one. Let's look at some of the other cool things with the new NX Sketcher. So what we have on my screen is the simple mechanism, but guess what? This is not 3 separate sketches. It's just one. And as I expand the sketch on my part navigator, you'll notice crank and piston. We're actually able to take and group our parts. So we can just take, whoops, I need to actually be inside of the sketcher first. We can just select these, right click, new sketch group. So I'll call this the link. I can then take this part and actually link it. What's nice about this is any adjustments that I make, well, to the, let's say in this case to the piston, what happens? The link shrinks. But if I don't want that link to shrink, all I need to do is go back into it and turn it off. So it's no longer active, so to speak. And then any changes that I would make, well, it's acting just like a piston would. So we can see that movement. Again, this is a simple thing, but really nice that within one sketch, you can actually separate different parts. Pretty cool. Finish that one. The next part we're going to go to is this guy. Now this is just going to show us how powerful the new sketch tool is. Let's just say that we look at our part here, and as it turns out, this entire stem needs to be rotated back, and then this top part needs to be horizontal. If you take a second and just think, how would you do that in previous versions of NX? It would be a lot of work. You likely would take and copy everything, paste it, then you would use the old move curve, try and rock the pieces back. But you can see there's just a lot of work to it. With this new version of sketching though, it becomes really easy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to relax dimensions. Basically what that means is I'm not so concerned about my dimensions right now. I'm also going to turn on this really powerful option called rotate drag. And I get this little rotating wheel. I'll come in, select my parts. I also want those two. And then it's just a click and drag. Now, I know on the screen this looks really simple because in the new version it is simple. But think about how you'd have to do that in previous versions of NX. How you'd have to have all those dimensions or all those constraints and you'd have to adjust for them. It would be a lot of work. Now I want to take this and I want it to be horizontal to my screen. So first, I'll move the little rotating wheel, make my picks, click and drag, and done. This only took a few seconds to make that change. A rather drastic change, I would say. But with the new solver, it's really easy to do. I'm just looking at the rest of this. Wait a minute. That's one of those diameters that should be a radius. No problem. I'll fix that while I'm here as well. And that one too. The new solver, the new sketcher, it's just taking something that worked really well, flipped it on its head, and now it works even better. I hope that you're getting to see that 30% savings of time, that it's not an exaggeration. I'll just finish this one. We're going to look at another little part here. So here I've got this part, and you can see it's fully defined. But let's just say that what I want is I want this entire leg, I want it to move up. That's all that I want. So we know that we can just take and click and drag. Nope, that's not working. We could maybe go in and add a dimension. So I'll put a dimension on there. Nope, that's not working either. That's not exactly what I wanted. What I'm trying to show here is sometimes when we're working with the new solver, we can get a little frustrated where we think, why isn't this working exactly the way that I want it to? I just want this part to, this leg to move. Well, we have to always think about what is NX actually doing. So if I click on a line, I can see all the relations that are on there. So I can see that a lot of this is symmetric. Well, that makes sense. The symmetric tool is an awesome relation to use. So when I'm trying to move this, there's that symmetric relationship. So maybe what I could do is I'll try to edit this dimension, but at the same time, I'm going to select all these bits that I want to move. Now here's something that's really neat. When I move my mouse over any relation, I can see here's a symmetric relation. So I can just click on it to relax it. And that basically means that the software is just going to ignore that relation. So I'll just make sure I find them all. I think there's one more down there. Yep. So I've got those relaxed, and then I'm able to make the adjustment. And I can just key that in. So a couple things that we're neat to see there is we're able to, when we select multiple curves, we're able to adjust them with one dimension. And the whole reason that we showed you this part is sometimes when we're working, it's just frustrating. Why isn't it moving? Well, just think about the relations that you have on there. And you can relax the dimensions, and you can also relax relations. Although we want to use the relaxed relations very, very rarely because we like the relations that we have. Something else that I like to point out is we also have this option for persistent relations. When I turn that on, you can see the relations that I have. And what it does is it kind of makes that relation like the constraint that we're kind of used to. So I'll just turn that back off. So the new solver, the new sketcher, it's just different and better, in my opinion. And then the last thing I want to show on this little part is there's this new thing called shake and break. So if I highlight a different part or highlight these couple curves, and then I select and move my mouse around, kind of like a crazy person, look at that. It takes and it breaks that right off. So again, that's just selecting a portion and then shaking the mouse and it breaks it. So if we had some additional things that we needed to do, it helps us to do all of that. Let me go back to my PowerPoint. Whoops. So the big question, how long can you use the old sketch? Because there is a way to go back into the sketcher and make the adjustment. Well, hopefully, and we've only taken, what, 20, 25 minutes. hopefully you won't even bother with the old sketcher. Just use the new one because it works really, really well. At this point, we're going to open it up for any questions. And I can see we do have a couple. The first one is, where can I get part number 1? Well, you can get that from me. So I tell you what, after our webinar, I'll just send it to you. So the question was, will that auto align, will that work within the hole command? Unfortunately, the answer is no, it won't. So if I create a sketch for my holes, I'm within that hole command, I place my first point, and you'll notice it doesn't give me the ability to kind of touch off and align. So what I have to do is put in my second point and just align those with the horizontal or the vertical tool. Good question. We'd like everybody to mark your calendars the 4th Tuesday of each month. That is Turk's Tips and Tricks. So mark your calendars. And I just had one other question just pop in. What version of NX are you using? 1953. So 1953 is the version, and boy, is it a good one. At this time, I'd like to thank all of you for your time and for your attention. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot us an email at sales@goplm.com. And then you can also see I've got this little QR code on there. Would you like to know about our other upcoming webinars? Well, if so, just go ahead and scan that code. And before I close the meeting, make sure you download the handout because it's a really good one. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day and be safe.